the Building Your Brand podcast. I have recorded this episode multiple times, and for various reasons, I got myself in a muddle, or the video corrupted, or something happened. So I think I'm on about my 5th attempt now, and honestly, it's a tricky topic that I'm going to cover today because it's very divisive, and that is AI and how I'm currently feeling about AI. Now, you might have noticed that every guest that comes on the podcast at the moment, I basically ask them about how they feel about AI. And I think part of that is me just trying to gather different people's views and opinions to help me formulate my own, because I am really struggling with it. And I think one of the reasons that I am struggling with it is that there is so much grey. It really helps me when, things are very clear cut, when it's very much, this is right and this is wrong, when there are very particular rules, or maybe like everybody feels a particular way about something. And I think there's so much grey in this topic that I am really struggling to work out how I feel about it. And I do have a lot of concerns about AI in general. There's plenty of areas where I can totally see how it's useful and it's a valuable tool, but on the most part, I feel very cautious about it. So I thought I would share my thoughts with you in this episode. I want to caveat this by saying this is just how I feel right now. I am expecting that over time things will change. I'm not sure in which direction. I guess as more information comes out and as more research is done, I will adjust my opinions accordingly. So I guess what I'm saying is don't hold me to anything that I say. I might change my mind. But also, I would love to hear what you think. So if I say something and you feel differently about it, feel free to come and tell me. I'm very happy to have sort of respectful conversations, with people who have a different viewpoint to me. So I guess the first thing that I want to say is I do acknowledge that there are some areas where AI is going to be incredibly beneficial to people, to humanity as a whole. And I guess the most obvious of those is in the sort of medical arena. So, an AI tool that can spot cancer cells before the human eye, I mean, that's going to be incredible. Like the medical advancements that might happen as a result of AI, I think really are going to be, like amazing, and are going to have a huge sort of positive benefit on us. I think there's other ways, where it kind of reduces very monotonous tasks that maybe we, don't want to do. I think, for small business owners, especially when you've got someone who's like juggling all the hats, I can totally see how outsourcing some tasks to AI can be really, really beneficial. But I do have concerns. So I'm going to go through, I guess, my main concerns with you. So I think the first one is consent. I think there are so many instances where people are uploading other people's likeness or other people's work to AI without their permission. And I think that is a huge problem. I also think it's a huge problem that a lot of these large AI models, that are LLMs or generative AI models, I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, to be honest, but hopefully you know what I mean. A lot of these tools, most of these tools have scraped the internet and they have used people's work without their permission and without their consent. And that really does put me off using them, because I don't feel okay about that. Like that really does feel like a violation, I guess, as someone who is a creative and creates a lot of design work. The thought of that being used, I'm sure it will have been, but the thought of that being used to train AI models without my permission just doesn't feel very good. So that is a big one, consent. I think we're seeing lots of very concerning scenarios where people are taking someone's likeness and creating, I guess, like fraudulent ads. So I saw this happen to a YouTuber I follow called Katie Steckley. They had basically used her videos on YouTube, created an AI avatar of her, and put together an ad. I mean, it didn't massively sound like her, and it was very clear that it was AI, but it's just going to get better and better, and it's not going to be as clear that it's AI. That is really concerning. I actually have, for a long time, had this sort of deal with my family where I'm really concerned about the fact that there's, a lot of hours of my voice online. Someone could easily clone it and call my parents and say, hey, I'm in trouble, I need loads of money. So we've come up with like a code question that we can ask that basically only the people in my family, in my close family, would know the answer to. So I think we are going to see a lot more scams, very sort of complex scams that are harder to spot, and that really yeah, that really concerns me. But like the consent issue is huge, you know, like people taking our stuff and using it without our consent. I actually had a call with a lawyer today to update my contracts, and you know, part of that will be having a section of my contract that says that my clients can't take the designs that I've created for them and then create derivatives of that or other versions of that using an AI tool. So that's the first thing. I think the next thing is copyright. One of the things that's really important to me as a branding designer is that my clients are really confident that what I have created is original, it's unique, they can trademark it. And if I use an AI tool in my creative process for the final piece, probably it's fine if I was using it in the like ideation phase, but for the final piece, if I used any AI, that would mean that they would not be able to trademark it. And so I think thinking about this sort of copyright aspect is really, really important. So I'm also having a clause put into my contracts so that I am really transparent and clear with my clients as to how I will be using AI. I think the next thing that I worry about is just my brain. And, you know, I think more and more research is coming out now where we are starting to see the impact that using AI excessively has on people's creativity, their thought processes, how their brain functions. And if you think, you know, like the brain is a muscle that needs to be used to work successfully, you know, if we stop using that muscle in the same way, we stop thinking critically, we stop you know, solving problems in the way that we have before, and we outsource that thinking to a robot, like I think that is going to have a really negative impact. So yeah, I worry about what will happen to my brain if I use AI too much. And I think for me, you know, I really, really value my creative process, and it's not an easy process. I joke with my friend Lois that there's always a part of the process where you're in the darkest depths. We call it the dark night of the soul, where basically everything's going wrong, everything's horrible, we hate all of our designs, and that doesn't feel good at the time, but to me it's so valuable because it helps me solve the problem. I almost have to go through this bit where nothing's working, I hate it all, I start to doubt myself, and that's usually the sign that I'm just about to solve the problem and I'm just about to come to a solution that I'm really happy with. So I think that whole process, the struggle and the satisfaction, I think that's all important. And I think when we use tools that speed up the process so much and cut out such core parts of the creative process, like again, I worry, like what is that going to do for our brain, our problem solving abilities? Yeah, so that is another thing. And I think finally, like I really appreciate craftsmanship, human craftsmanship. And yes, the process, but also just, you know, the amount of time it takes to learn something and to hone a craft and become good at something. I think that's such valuable, like those are valuable skills that are so human. And, you know, we all have access to that, maybe not in the same way, but we all have the ability to find something we love, work on it, practice it over time and get really good at it and potentially make money from it. And I feel really sad at the thought of that going. One of the things that I have really noticed is that I can be really moved by someone's creativity. So by art that I see, music that I listen to. I went to a talk a couple of years ago by a music producer, and he shared a story. I think his name was Oak Estra. He shared a story about how a piece of music that he had written basically helped this really young girl who was going through all these horrific medical procedures. It basically helped her get through them. And he showed this video of her going through this awful procedure, and she was singing the song to herself. And I'm not joking, like I bawled my eyes out. I was in a huge conference. I reckon half the auditorium were crying. And I was so moved by how something he had made himself had helped this other human being so much. And I think, you know, when I go to an art gallery and I look at, you know, the work in awe, like how did they do that? How did they come up with that idea, that brush stroke? You know, how did they learn the skills to be able to create this thing in front of me? I just love that awe and wonder. And I have noticed that I don't feel that awe and wonder when it is something that has been made by a robot. It doesn't move me. Like I don't feel anything when I look at work like that. So whether it's something that's been written by an LLM, which is a large language model, so like ChatGPT or Claude, or whether it's something, that has come out of Nano Banana, I just find it really hard to get excited and inspired by it in the same way that I would more traditional art methods. I think it'd be the same with design. Like, one of the feelings that I have felt so often in my career as a designer is when I see something that someone else has designed and it's so clever and it's such a smart solution to a problem, and I just, I'll sit there and I'll think, oh, I really wish I had done that because it's so good. And I just don't have that when it comes to work created by a robot. So I think there just feels like there's something missing there. Now, obviously, I haven't even touched on, some of the ethical issues. I mean, I've touched on the sort of scraping the internet without permission. There's like environmental impacts, and I want to try and keep this episode shortish, so I'm not going to go into great depths on all of those things. But I think it is important to not get swept up by the messaging of, if you don't get on board with this, you're going to get left behind. We need to be cautious about how we adopt these tools, because they are going to have a huge impact, not just globally. I mean, AI is not going anywhere, and I do use it. It's in a lot of the tools that I use, like baked in. So there's aspects of it that I am using, some with my knowledge, sometimes possibly without even, without my knowledge. So I'm not saying that I don't use it at all, but I do think that we need to think about the impact that it is going to have on us. One of the questions I keep coming back to, I did a podcast episode with Meg Fatherly, and in that episode she asked the question, at what cost? And honestly, ever since that episode, I've asked myself that so many times. And so as I, think about these tools, as things change very, very quickly in my industry, in lots of other industries, I keep asking myself, at what cost? And so I don't know if this will give anybody any clarity or any answers if they're struggling with this as well, but I just wanted to share kind of where I'm at with it all. So, I'm going to keep exploring different tools. There is one, workflow that I've used that uses some AI, which is for repurposing my own content. So taking the transcripts from the podcast episodes and turning them into a different format. So like a carousel post, and it pulls out, I might do a video about this actually. It pulls out bits from the episode and it can sort of cite where in the transcript it's got those, bits of information from. So it feels like it's repurposing something that I've already created rather than creating something from scratch. And that I feel a bit more comfortable with. So, as I said at the beginning when I caveated all this, I am not by any means not using AI at all. Maybe I'll go in that direction, maybe I'll go in the other direction, but I have a lot of worries and a lot of concerns about AI at the moment. And part of it, I think, deep down comes from my love of people, my love of humanity. I just love hearing people's stories. I love the human aspect of the work that I do, and I just don't want anything to take that away. So I think that's where my concerns come from. But as I said, I'd love to hear what you think. Come find me on Instagram where I'm at Liz M. Mosley or at Building Your Brand Podcast. Let's have a conversation about it. I'd love to hear your perspective, and if it's something that you have embraced and you'd love, or is it something that you're concerned about, and let's keep the conversation going.